All right, let's talk about one of the absolute trickiest parts of life today, those charged, difficult conversations. Now, what if I told you that the secret to actually connecting with people, to depolarizing our world, wasn't to make our arguments simpler, but to make them more complex? I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it's a powerful idea from Adam Grant's book, Think Again. And honestly, it might just change the way you see your next disagreement.
So let me just kick this off with a question that sounds, well, pretty much impossible. Could you take two people, total strangers, who are sworn enemies on a topic as divisive as abortion, and get them to find common ground? Enough common ground to actually write and sign a joint statement together. And get this, do it all in just 20 minutes. Well, believe it or not, the answer is a resounding yes. And this isn't just some thought experiment. It really happened. It happened at Columbia University in a place called the Difficult Conversations Lab. It's all the work of a psychologist named Peter Coleman, who has literally spent decades trying to figure out what makes these impossible conversations possible. So, how'd he do it? Well, Coleman ran this absolutely fascinating experiment. Here's the key. Before he had people discuss abortion, he first had them read an article on a totally different hot-button topic, gun control. And this is where things get really interesting. Okay, so the first group, they read the kind of article you see all the time, right? A standard, balanced, both sides piece that lays out the arguments for gun rights and the arguments for gun legislation. Then they sat down to talk about abortion. So how do you think they did? 46%. Almost half of them managed to find enough common ground to write and sign that joint statement. Now, let's just stop there for a second. For a topic this polarizing, getting almost half of opposing pairs to agree on anything is, well, that's already a huge success. But believe it or not, that wasn't the incredible part. The second group? They read an article that had all the same facts, but it was framed in a totally different way. Instead of presenting gun control as this black and white, two-sided debate, the article was complexified. It showed it as a problem with tons of different viewpoints, all these shades of gray. So what was their success rate? 100%, every single pair. Just by reading a more nuanced take on one tough issue, it unlocked a perfect record of agreement on a completely different one. So what on earth is going on here? Well, to get it, we first have to identify the villain that keeps us all stuck. The problem, the real villain of productive dialogue, is something that psychologists call binary bias. It's the enemy of understanding, and it's the reason so many of our conversations just go completely off the rails. See, our brains are just wired to look for clarity. And what's the fastest way to get it? We take a messy, complicated reality and we chop it up into two neat little boxes. Good versus evil, right versus wrong, us versus them. It's a mental shortcut, sure, but it's a shortcut that actually shuts down our ability to think. Think about it like this. Binary bias turns every single issue into two sides of a coin. Everything is black and white. And the whole point of the conversation becomes about winning the argument. But complexifying, that's totally different. It's like looking through a prism. You're not seeing two sides, you're seeing all the different shades of gray. And the goal isn't to win, it's to learn. So if binary bias is our villain, then we need a hero, right? Well, here it is. The act of complexifying. This is the antidote. This is the key that unlocks genuinely productive conversations. You know, the poet Walt Whitman really captured this idea beautifully. When we're able to see the complexity in an issue, it suddenly creates the space for us to see the complexity in each other and even in ourselves. It completely shatters that us versus them mindset. Take climate change, for example. We almost always hear it talked about as a simple binary, right? You're either a believer or a denier. But the reality is a whole spectrum. Research shows there are at least 6 distinct groups of thought here, from alarmed all the way to dismissive. Most of us are somewhere in that messy middle, but that middle is usually invisible. When you make it visible, the entire conversation changes. You see this exact same pattern in the debate over emotional intelligence. It's always framed as these two extremes. You've got the preacher who says it's more important than IQ, and the prosecutor who says it's basically a fraud. The actual complex, scientific view? Well, its importance is contingent. It depends on the situation. It's absolutely crucial for, say, a therapist, but maybe a little less so for a mechanic. The truth isn't on one side or the other. It's in the context. Okay, so the big takeaway here is that embracing complexity isn't just about being more accurate, it's actually more persuasive. So how can we actually do it? Let's break this down into a practical, hands-on toolkit. It really boils down to three simple things you can start doing in your own conversations. You can add caveats, highlight contingencies, and embrace emotional complexity.
So first up, caveats and contingencies. This is really just about admitting what you don't know and being super clear about when an idea works and when it doesn't. Now, here's the part that might surprise you. Studies show that when experts express this kind of nuanced doubt, they don't seem weaker. They actually become more credible and more persuasive.
And the third thing, and this one's a big one, is about emotion. We usually think the goal is to just strip all the emotion out of these tough conversations, but Peter Coleman's research shows the complete opposite is true. Productive conversations aren't less emotional, they're more emotionally complex. People feel a whole mix of things. Sure, frustration, but also curiosity and anxiety and even excitement.
Okay, all of this leads to one final, really crucial shift in our mindset. And it's all about how we try to understand the other person in the first place.
You know, we're always told to practice perspective taking, to try and put ourselves in someone else's shoes. The only problem is, we are terrible at it. We just end up guessing, our guesses are usually wrong, and that just makes us overconfident in our bad assumptions. What actually works is perspective seeking. Instead of assuming you know where someone's coming from, you just ask them. It really is that simple. So that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world that feels so polarized, complexity can feel like a real hassle, an inconvenient truth. But as Adam Grant argues, what if we just reframed it? What if complexity isn't the obstacle? What if it's actually an invigorating truth, a sign that there's always more to learn and that there's a path forward we can actually find together? Maybe think about that in your next charged conversation.